Okay, we're up to the new parak, Samach Aleph on the base. I hope everyone had a great Yontif. Siman Simcha Seinu. This is the highlight of the year. Kadosh Baruch Hu, we're leaving, and Be'ez Hashem should be a new start, a new aschala of alles. It's Parnasa, the Revach. The most important thing, everyone should be healthy, and everyone should steig in their own Yiddishkeit in the service of Kadosh Baruch Hu. Says the Mishnah, Hador ima akum. Now we know Erev Chatzeres, guys. Just to reiterate. If you have a chutzner and you have other, we go ahead and we make a communal, we put a box of matzah in somebody's house. Now it's like we all live in that house, and it's one house, one chutzner, it works. If you have a guy in your chutzner, you have a problem, right? So we touched upon this earlier. The guy is coming back, not coming back. Now, if it's a Jew, you have a constant bittul rishus. In other words, let's say everyone on this, we all live in a cul-de-sac, everyone on the screen, we forget to make an Erev. I forget to make an Erev, and I say, and you guys say, guys, I'm stuck. Can you help me out? Eliezer Stern. I say, no problem. I'm a vato my rishus. We had a machlokes whether you can go into my house or not, but clearly you can go into the chutzner, correct? And again, just remember, Erev Chatzeres is all a gezerah de Rabbanan. We want to stop you going from your house to your chutzner to stop you going from rishus hayachid to rishus harabim. So the problem over here, you have a goy. A goy cannot be mevatel his chutzner. So what happens? Says the Mishnah, Hador ima akum, someone lives with a guy, the chotzer, oy imi she'ena moide be'erev. This is a kuti. The kutim did not believe in erev. We thought once upon a time they might be geri emes. They turned out to be geri arayos. They had a problem with lions. They were getting eaten up by lions. And we found on the Harat Soifim, we found a pigeon that they were serving as an avodah zarah, something a guy's license. And so therefore we turned out they're goyim, and therefore what? But still they're kutim. They're not believed. Have you said oiser love? The goy or the kut would go ahead and ask you to carry from your house into the chutzner. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer, no. If it's one goy and one Jew, it won't aser. La'olamena oiser ad sheyu shnei Yisraelim oisrim zeh al zeh. Only when it's two Yisraelim that aser one upon the other. In other words, in order for the goy to aser, you would need two Jews. In other words, you need one Jew to aser. Two Jews and one guy would aser. One Jew and one guy would not. The Gemara is going to explain the machlokes between Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov and Reb Meir. Rabbi Gamliel. Now we conclude the Mishnah with two cases, which we're not going to focus on at all. We'll just say them, but they're not the subject of the next two block Gemara. Rabbi Gamliel Ma'aseh b'tzedaikim echad. Now the tzedaikim were not kutin. The tzedaikim were Jews who were only moide in Torah shebechsav. They didn't believe in Torah shebal peh. So there was a ma'aseh with tzedaikim echad shehaya dar imanu b'mavoy. They lived with the mishpacha of Rabbi Gamliel's in a mavoy. Again, they had chatzerim entering into the alleyway, Yerushalayim. V'amar, and he Rabbi Gamliel told us, v'amar lanu abba maharu v'hoitzi es hakelim l'mavi. Hurry up. Take your kalim, put them in the amavui, before this tzedaki puts his kalim, and if his kalim are there first, they're going to asa upon you. Again, we'll get into this much later. Another way the story came about. Go ahead, do all your needs. Erev Shabbos in the mavui, before he is going to bring out his kalim and then ask you. So according to the first lashon, we would be able to take jurisdiction of the mavui if we're there first. According to the second edition, no, there's not. Just use it as long as you can. But once the tzedaki gets there, it's too late and you're finished. Getting back to our Mishnah, we had a machlokes between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. What's the story with one guy and what's the story with two Jews? How does that work? Says the Gemara on Daf Samech Beis. Yosef Abaye bar Rovin, Rav Chinna bar Rovin, Yosef Abaye Gabayu, and Abaye was sitting with them. Yosef Bekamri Bishlim Rav Meir Ksava Iris Ovikachavim Shmel Dira. He holds the dira of a guy, has the din of a dira, and Mimela he had, in other words, just like a Jew, and his jurisdiction can stop you from carrying. His jurisdiction can stop you from carrying. Why? He owns a piece of the chutzner, and since you can't do anything, so it's like carrying from one rishus to another rishus. His bailus in the chutzner is another rishus. I can't carry from one rishus to another rishus. So I understand the svara of Reb Meir. The reason why I can't go ahead and and carry into that rishus is because by living with him, I'm finished. Because shma dira, it's considered a dira. Masha ein kain, v'leishna chad, v'leishna trey, doesn't make a difference. Elul Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, my kasavar, what does he hold? Again, just to reiterate, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov said, when you have two Jews and one guy, then it's usher. One guy, one Jew would not be usher. Fred the Gemara now. If he holds like Reb Meir that the bailus of a guy is a dira, then afilu chadnami nitzer. Even one guy should do the job to asa you to carry because you can't make an erev with the guy. Dira, and if he holds that the bailus of a guy is nishkain bailus, it doesn't impede it whatsoever. Afilu treinami loy nitzer. Even with two Jews, you should be mutter. So we don't understand the svara of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov at all. He says, one guy, two Jews, you're finished. Fred the Gemara, what does that mean? If he holds the guy has bailus, forget the two Jews. The fact that there's one guy with bailus is going to stop me from being able to carry in the chutzner because I can't make an erev with him. And if he holds the bailus of a guy is nothing, let's take it down. So even with two Jews, you should be able to carry, either by making an erev or having them being mevatel l'rishus if you don't make an erev. So I don't understand Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov shita. It makes no sense. So right now, in the realm of Eruvin, using what we know about Eruvin, the halacha of ownership in a chutzner, and the need to go ahead and make a communal ownership, we don't understand the shita of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. It doesn't seem to make any sense. Continues the Gemara. Amlu Abaya. Could you possibly think, before we get to Eliezer ben Yaakov, let's go back to Rabbi Eliezer, Reb Meir. Reb Meir, you're telling me he holds that a guy's bailus, and therefore it makes sense why one Jew, one guy, usher. That would make sense. What Tanya? Chatzera shel ovid kichavim, the chatzar of a guy, harihu kidir shel behema. It's mamish like what? It's like a corral, and a corral certainly has no bailus. So we have a problem. We have a problem with Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. We thought we didn't have a problem with Rabbi Meir. We even have a problem with Meir because Rabbi Meir holds that the bailus of a guy is not a bailus. So why shouldn't I be able to carry? It's like I live alone in the chutzner. If you live in the chutzner and you have a dog that lives there or a cow that lives there, the dog or the cow can't stop you from carrying. Neither can the bailus of a guy because lo yishma dira. So now we don't understand Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, and we don't understand Reb Meir. That's why Fred the Gemara says, "El the kuliyam diras akim lo yishma dira." The dira of an akim is not a dira. Okay, now let's explain the different shitas. Ve'chacha b'gezera shema yilmod mi ma'asav kaniflagi. And here, what are we worried about? We're worried about you living with a guy, and you might learn from his actions. So, fellas, this has nothing to do with Masechtas Eruvin. It's not a din in bailus whatsoever. Nothing whatsoever to do with bailus. It's simply a gezerah that the Chachamim made to keep you away from the goyim, that you shouldn't learn from the actions of a goy. That's this whole sugya. That the whole sugya here, guys, is staying away from the goyim and not to learn from their what? Not to learn from their actions. That's what we're discussing over here.
It's Xer and Xer. The whole Erev is Xer in the first place.
But this is not a Xer. This is another Gezerah. You can't do this. It's a separate Gezerah. Why can't you have one guy and one yid? So now we have to understand. So if you hold Lo Yishma Dira, we don't understand Reb Meir. We don't understand the Chachamim. We don't understand Reb Meir. If it's Lo Yishma Dira, why can't you carry? We don't understand Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. If Lo Yishma Dira, so if I have two Jews, it should work. So right now, what are we worried about? Learning from the mice. And here's the machlokes. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov savar, kiven the oivi kechavim chasher ashlichas damim. Since goyim tend to be violent and murderous by nature, trade the shchichi the diary gazer bahu. Two, that it's shayach to live. Two Jews will live with one guy because the guy will be scared to kill the other Jew because there's another Jew there. There, the Chachamim and Geyser don't live together. You may learn from their actions. Chad, one guy, leishchicha. One Jew and one guy is milsa leishchicha because he's going to worry about getting killed. And therefore, I didn't make the Gezerah. That's Rabbi Yasmin Yaakov. Like Gosber Rabbanan. Reb Meir Savar, Zin in the Mikri, it could happen. B'dayer v'am Rabbanan, ein Eruvin moil b'makom akum, vein bittul b'shus moil b'makom akum, achiyasra akum. Then loy moiker. Okay, let's go through this. We know Reb Meir guys is chayish l'miuta. Throughout Shas, Reb Meir always comes up with, we have to worry, a cotton or katana can't do yibum. Maybe he's going to end up being a sris. She's going to be an islandist. They won't be able to have children. And you're going to end up being poigeya be'erva. You're going to have a problem of erva. He's always chayish l'miut to Reb Meir. That's what we know. So over here also, it's not common for one yid to live with one guy, but it could happen. And since it could happen, they made a gezerah. What was the gezerah? You can't live together. Back to our Mishnah. Hadorim ha'akom b'chotzer. If someone lives with an akom in a chotzer, or im mishe'ena moide be'erev harizel eisra love. There's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do because we don't want you doing anything here. This is not an Eruvin din. This is a din you're going to learn from the actions, and we're going to see it in a second. What happens when you try to do something? Rabbi Elazar Yaakov Omer, that gezerah is only in a situation that is commonly found. It's not going to aser till you're going to have what? You're going to have two Yisraelim. When you have two Yisraelim who will go ahead and aser on each other, that's a milsa de shchichi. There we'll have the gezerah. Masha'en came where it's one-on-one. That's not happening. That's the pshat in the Mishnah. Now, what's going to happen? You live with a guy in a chutzner. You end up like Reb Meir. You end up like what? Like Rabbi Elazar Yaakov, 2-to-1, 1-to-1. What can you do? That's what we're going to say right now. For Amru Rabbanon, let's go back a few lines. Ein Eruvin moil b'makom akum. There's no such thing as an Eruv. If you go and tell the guy, listen, here's a box of Shevis matzah, give me $1. No, not going to work. Even if he wants to give you the $1, not going to work. We don't have an Eruv with a guy. Nada, does not exist. Listen, you want to be a good Shabbos guy? I got a problem. We live together. Let's do something. Just again, it's like Pesach. It's like Pesach when the guy buys a chametz. The biggest nightmare in the world is the guy shows up on Pesach and says, "Where's the booze?" You know, right? You know, it's all a facade in a way. It's a real mechira, of course, but we know it's never going to happen. So the same thing over here. Listen, Paul, John, Tyrone, do me a favor. Go ahead and we'll do something called nullification. For my purpose, I have to go from point A to point B. You don't have to know anything. Just do one thing. Say that, Rabbi, Yankel, it's okay, Yankel. My property, you can trespass on my property. That's all. Nope, ain't bittul, doesn't work. What does work? John, do me a favor. Can you rent your property to me? John incredulously looks up and goes, I should rent my property to you? But he's not going to do it. He's not going to do it. And since he won't do it, it's going to keep you from ever living together with him. Because if you ever get in the scenario that you need to go ahead and carry from point A to point B, you're never going to be able to do it. Erev you don't have, Bittul Rishus you don't have. The only resolve you have is to rent. He's not going to rent to you. And I'm going to see why in a second. And that's Pshat in the Mishnah. That's Pshat in the Mishnah. Says the Gemara, my time, why won't he rent to you? He laid him if because he holds maybe he's worried you'll come to take possession of his rishus. You'll squat and take possession of his rishus. We'll see what that means in a second. If you need literally a healthy skiris. That you'll get away with a lousy skiris. What are you going to say? In other words, there's an option for a lousy a lousy skiris. What does that mean? The itmar, Rav Chisda Amar skiris bria. You need in order to rent from a guy, you mamish need a very healthy skiris. Rav Sheshes Amar, skiris ru, even a lousy skiris. My ru, what do you mean a lousy skiris? My bria, ilay my bria pruta. Bria means that you give him a pruta, and ru is pachas mishava pruta, and therefore less than a shava pruta. Miyikul man the Amar miyakim pachas mishava pruta loy. Guess for us, a pruta, guys, is the bottom line of coin. There's a machna Ephraim, how it doesn't work, pruta, that a person's meichel pruta, or whatever it is, the Torah, we know the bottom line, the minimal coin is a pruta. For a guy, it's pachas mishava pruta, as we'll see in a second. For Shalach Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yaakov bar Guriya Mishmei de Rabbi Yochanan, have you should be aware, shesoichrin mina akum, I feel with pachas mishava pruta. You could go ahead and rent from a guy even less than a shava pruta. We know the 7 mitzvahs by Noach. One of them is what is gezel. If we steal, our minimal share of gezela is a pruta. Our minimal share of hashava, the heshiv is gezela, is a pruta. That's the machna Ephraim, whether it's mechila, it's money in a person's meichel, or it's not money at all. That's the Torah, that's the chakira. By a goy, pachas mishava pruta, he is chayev misa, because as a haran zui misasan, you don't need edim, you don't need asra. The goy steals, that's it. And in fact, there's no din of hashava by a goy. So therefore, you see, pachas mishava pruta is not considered a schiris ru'ah. It's the same as a pruta by us, because for a goy, pachas mishava pruta does his geld. It's his life. So Memela, that can't be the chilik between schiris buria and schiris ru'ah, because pachas mishava pruta is the same as a pruta. Ella bria means b'muhurki ve'arburgani. Schiris means when you take bilis, you're able to take out the lawn chairs there. You know, the guy rents you, and there you put your car there, you put your barbecue there, you're taking possession. And ru'ya b'loy muhurki burgani, you leave it empty. So Memela, this thing the Mandiyama says schiris bria. We can understand why the guy's not going to rent. He doesn't want to go ahead and have all your stuff there, right? He doesn't want to have stuff there. Whatever. I know a person rented a house that the basement, someone put something in the basement and Balabas went crazy. My son, such a person very close to me. And now but the guy, if it's schiris ru'ah, why should he care? So the Gemara answers right away. And I understand why the guy is not going to rent, because he doesn't want to see your barbecue, your car, he doesn't want to see all your objects in his driveway. What's he worried about? Why won't he rent to you? Because again, this is all predicated upon the only way you can get ownership is by renting from him. And if it's not going to be any sweat off his back because he's getting money and you don't have anything in taking possession, why won't he rent to you? Says the Gemara, a guy is going to worry that you may cast a spell on him by being part of his property, and he won't rent. That's it. Let's go back to the Mishnah, guys. If you live with an akum in a chaser, you won't have any option. Why? Eruvin doesn't help. Bittul Rishus doesn't help. The only thing that helps is rental. And he's not going to rent to you. He's not going to rent to you. If it's because you're going to put your objects in, and even that, he's not going to rent to you because he's chayish for kshafim. He's chayish for spells, and that's it. That's the Mishnah. Nothing to do with halacha of a dira, owning a piece of property. Does a guy have bilis? Does he have a din of chatzar? Which we'll get to in a second. Guys, everything's clear? It's good? We're all good, right? Okay, great. Going back to something we said before. Gufa. The property of a guy is like that of a behema. I like to do a Rashi over here. Let's go through it slowly, and I think it's going to clarify a lot of things. Go up a little bit. The first words are on the line, Chatzera Shalakim. Af agav shestam chetzerois psuchim l'soichin batim harbe. Think about a cul-de-sac, and you have a bunch of houses opening up into the cul-de-sac. So let's say this cul-de-sac is in a real spitz goyish neighborhood. I don't even know. Mamish goyish ebed goyish. You have one guy after another guy after another guy after another guy. Ein mishus akim chaluka, the house of this guy, this rishus that he has in his cul-de-sac, in his chutzner, is not lichoshev considered rishus kol echad v'echad levadai. They're not considered separate. Go to Tom's River. Go to any Jewish neighborhood. Go to Woodmere. You have 5 people in the cul-de-sac. Each person has a right in the cul-de-sac. 5 bailas right there. If you have the same scenario, just change the names of the people in the houses to Goyish names. They do not have bailas there. They're not a rishus. It's kedir behema. Like a behema doesn't have rishus. They don't have rishus. Continues. So my nafkamina, guys, if it's a bunch of goyim living together, what does it have to do with Judaism, right? Continues Rashi. V'Yisrael she'ena dari mahem, a Jew that does not live among them, shenichnis le'echem en abatim, who goes into one of the houses, he's there for Shabbos. So now, guys, he's in the house for Shabbos. Can he carry into the chutzner? Is that considered a separate rishus? Obviously not. Why? Because the dira of a guy is not considered a rishus. It's considered like the whole chutzner belongs to him. They don't own anything. Says the Gemara. B'Shabbos, muta lahoitzim min abotim l'chutzner. The Jew is able to take out from the houses to the chutzner. V'lo havi moitzim mirishus hamiuchedes la'akum, zeh l'rishus shehi l'kulon. And it's not considered as if he's taking out from Patrick's house and putting it into the cul-de-sac of John and Xavier and Tyrone and Shaquille. Got it? That's what it means that he doesn't have, it's like a dir akam. He doesn't have the same concept of rishus. The way to really understand this is beautifully. Just picture the idea of a Jew, which you got clearly, that we each have ownership and we want to go ahead, be ma'arav, make an Eruv. By a guy, it's not necessary. There is no ownership. There is no ownership. So now look at the words of the Gemara. Very beautiful. Kufa. Chatzera shel oived kechavim, harihu kidir shel behema. The chatzar of a guy is mamish like the deer of a behema. It's like the corral of an animal. Umota lahachnis lahaitzi. And therefore you're permitted to take in and out min chatzar lebatim, min batim lechatzar. Geschmack. V'im yesham Yisrael echad. However, you're not the only Jew there. There's another Jew there. Guess what? That's Oisa. That's going to Asa. Divrei Meir. These are the words of Meir. You're not, one Jew's not enough. You need 2 Jews. On the base. Going back over the brisa that we just mentioned. Amamar. Chatzera shel akum. Harihi kidir shel behema. Fred the Gemara. V'anan tanan. Hadbar im ma'akum b'chotzer. Harizeh oiser alav. 1 second. How can you tell me that what? It's like the deer of behema. And he has no ownership. Here we see in our Mishnah, if you live with an akim and a chotzer, harizeh oiser alav. It doesn't like kasha. Ha de isa, the guy is there. Ha de lesa. If the guy is not, if the guy is not there, it's not going to asa. If the guy is there, it's going to asa. Says Rashi, ha de lesa la'akum. When the akim is not there, lo yasa. But if there's another Jew there, he'll ask you in the house of the Yaakam, and even what if another Jew is not around? The key thing being what? That if the guy is around, it's going to asa. When it says Adar, if the guy is around, it asas. If he's not around, it doesn't. Umay kasava, says the Gemara. If you hold a dira without the owner being there, is considered a dira. Even if the guy is not around, it should be usher. And if you can tell me a dira without, in other words, what makes the dira is the Jew being there. Even if the Jew is not there, it should not. A Jew is there, it should not. If you hold a dira without bailim, is not considered a dira. Even Yisrael Nami should not have the ability to asa. And for the Gemara, Loim Ksav a dira b'lei bailim loishma dira. Taka, a dira without bailim is not considered a dira. I vid Yisrael the chiyisya asa. Yisrael who if he would be there with aser, kilesa goes with Rabbanan. So they agree the Rabbanan, since the Jew if he would be there with aser, so therefore the Rabbanan goes when he's not there. Akum the chiyisya, right, when he is there, Gezeira Shema Yilma Maisav. Here's Yankel, here's your Gezeira Gezeira. The guy, the only reason when he's there is not us, it's not because he has bias. We spoke at the Mishnah. It wasn't an Eruvin Dikadin, it was Allah and Derech Eretz. It's Allah Evat. So Memela here, since the whole thing is a Gezeira, Ki Isya Asar, because we should learn from him, Ki Lesa, when he's not here, like Asa. Why? We're not going to learn from him. He's not here. He lives half the year in Palo Alto, and you're living in Brooklyn. You know, it doesn't make a difference. The only time the guy's going to be a problem when he's around. Why? Because then you can learn from his meisim when he's not around. So very geschmack. A yid who has a din in Eruvin, if he would be here, he would asa. When he's away, he also asses. Masha Enkein, a guy only would asa when he's here because you don't want to learn from his actions. Memela, when he's not here and you don't have to worry about learning from his actions, then what? Then it's not a problem. If the guy is not around, we don't asa. Someone goes ahead, he leaves his house. He goes to take shmus in another city. You got your cul-de-sac. And in the cul-de-sac, you have all Yidden. One guy goes away, right? And he did not go ahead and make an Eruv with you. It's going to asa. It's going to asa. If it's a guy, also will asa. Divrei Meya. So 1 second. The guy is not there. Yet you're telling me it asks, why is that? You just told me the guy has nothing to do with Eruvin. So, and you told me, therefore, if the guy is not around, there's nothing to worry about. Listen to the words. Someone leaves his house. Whether it's a guy, Yisrael, Oyser, it's going to answer. How can the guy answer? He has no pilus. He's not there. He's nothing to learn from. And for the Gemara, Hasam the Asi Biyuma, the guy is close by. When we say that a guy, if you know he's in Palo Alto, you got nothing to worry about. But you know that the guy took a drive. He can be home in any minute. That's when he's going to ask. Masha Enkein, if you know for sure he's not going to be around, then he won't ask. I'm Rabbi Mishmuel. Halacha Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. The halacha is like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov that in order to answer, you need 2 Jews. Because with guys are in a situation of normalcy, 2 Jews will live with 1 guy. 1 Jew will not live with 1 guy because Yechayish, the guy's a murderer. Rav Huna Amar Minig Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Halacha means I'll teach it publicly in the base medrash. Minig means I'll give the psak privately but not publicize it. And Rabbi Yochanan Nogu Am Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. It's a minig, meaning if you don't give a psak at all, but if a person does it, you're not going to reverse him and tell him don't do it. Amli by Rabbi Yosef Kaimelon Mishnah Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Kavanaki. We have a rule in Shas. The Mishnah is of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Kav, meaning there are not too many of them. The Naki, but they're pure, meaning in Allah is like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov usually. But I'm Rabbi Shmuel Allah Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov.